Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. While we wait to get started, I want to remind everybody that the private chat any REALD and SOGI staff, if you're having technical challenges today, we have a live captioner, and to turn on captioning, you click the Show Captions button along the bottom of your screen in Zoom for those people on Zoom. Check out the Equity and Inclusion Division rulemaking website, which we've linked to our slides here. Funny enough, we linked to the website and the website actually has these slides, but they have the other materials that we might be referencing in this presentation today. And again, just chat us if you have any questions about that. We can send you the link directly. Folks are still filing in, so I'll just give a brief pause here to make sure we have everybody before we get started with our content today. All right, I think I see a message in the chat, and I think that most folks are here. There might be a few people who will be added later, but they do have the slides. So I think we can go ahead and continue. And please, again, please feel free to private chat us if you have any other questions as we go along. So I'm going to pass it over to Matt Friesen. Oh, sorry, Matt.
No, that is just fine. Good morning, everyone. My name is Matt Friesen. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the REALD SOGI manager over in the Department of Human Services. So it's a pleasure to be with you on this second REALD SOGI RAC meeting. This is December 1st, in case you all are looking at this as a recording. And want to thank you for joining this process. This is an essential process in the rulemaking around the REALD and SOGI questions. So it's fantastic to have the diversity of representation from organizations and leaders here today. In terms of introductions, Colleen, do you have any suggestions as far as how you would like to conduct introductions this morning?
I would say we could introduce ourselves as we go along, and you could start with yourself, and we will just remind folks to introduce themselves before they continue to present.
Okay. So again, my name is Matt Friesen, and I'm over in the Oregon Department of Human Services, and I help partner with OHA in working with the various programs around ODHS to integrate the REALD and SOGI questions, and then support the various programs around training and implementation and reporting, and using the demographic data that's collected to make adjustments to programs to address disproportionalities and inequalities that we discover through the programs here. I would like for us to just take a couple of minutes to, first of all, move through our agenda and the objectives for the meeting. So you see the agenda here in front of you. I won't necessarily go through it in great detail, but you'll see that we'll have time to explore House Bill 2134 in comparison to 3159, to take a look at some of the scoping for the tribal affiliation questions, and then talk a little bit more about the 3159 registry and the fire system. Also, we'll spend some time looking at the utility of open text questions and the extensive language list that has been added over the last couple of years, which is an exciting opportunity because we do have an amazing diversity of languages in Oregon. Some time to follow up on questions from the previous RAC meeting, and then a couple of really significant periods of time for breakout sessions. You'll notice those are about 45 minutes each. So we're looking forward to some really significant conversation and input during those sessions. And then we'll debrief as a group and wrap up and lay the foundation for the next meeting. So that's the general walk through the agenda. Objectives for the meeting overall. Colleen, if you want to hop into the next couple of slides here. Our hope is, and these expand on the agenda a bit, you'll see that, again, we'll look at the distinctions between House Bill 2134 and House Bill 3159, particularly with the focus on tribal questions. We'll also, again, take a good look at the requirements providers found in 3159 for electronic health recording systems and the interfacing with the fire system. And forgive me, I'm an ODHS person trying to speak OHA, which is, it's a whole different language. So in addition to those objectives, our hope is to take a look at the value of the open text questions for REALD and SOGI. And I think this is the next slide. We'll take a look at the 7,000 plus language list that we talked about using ISO codes and a smart filtering system for electronic systems. And then we'll have those 2 good chunks of time to talk about questions 2 of 5 questions during the breakout sessions. A couple of other things before handing the microphone back. Want to remind everyone that anything that is written or included as part of the chat during our RAC process is public record. So be aware of that as you're making comments, writing comments, and so forth. And also, one of the challenges, if you've ever been a part of the rulemaking process, is there's just never enough time or opportunity to connect with everyone that we would like to connect with. And so we really would hope that those of you who are a part of this process would reach out to your various constituencies in all of your various corners of Oregon, and to share the conversations, to share the proposals, to receive feedback, and then to be able to report back to this group. We want to be able to have as broad a representation of input as possible, even knowing that we're limited in the number of RAC sessions and folks that can gather at any particular time. So please feel free to consult with your constituents and to report that back during this process. And with that, I will hand the microphone, I believe, back over to Marjorie.
Good morning, everyone. Here's our second RAC. Thank you, Matt, for getting us started. Just a quick clarification. If we go to the next slide, first of our tribal question. We are going through a tribal consultation process that honors the government-to-government relationship that we have between OHA and the tribes. So the question related to tribal affiliation is to be defined by the tribes, and it will be done outside of this RAC process. So once I have confirmation of what those questions are, what they've suggested, then we will share, but until then we won't. So just if you find that you want to talk about in a breakout session, please don't. Please wait until the tribes have told us what they want to see, if they want to see, okay? And then the next slide is a clarification too. So it's a little tricky. So House Bill 2134, was passed in 2013. And it points to ORS 413161. And I'll put a link in the chat to all the ORS after I get done talking. But it's about the data collection standards for race, ethnicity, disability, language. And then in 2021, House Bill 3159 direct pointed to 413161 to add sexual orientation and gender identity. Okay, so 3159 pointed to 2134 and say, you need to include SOGI and update the standards. So that's what this RAC is about. But there's concerns about what does this mean for providers and insurers and CCO. And what it means is that once we have the registry go live, then the providers will need to do it to be in compliance with 2134 data collection standards. But that's unlikely to happen anytime soon, probably, I don't know, 2026. So it's a ways out. So for now, if you're providing to CCO, you do not need to send us the data using the REALD and SOGI data until we actually build the registry, which is what you see in the other Venn diagram. So House Bill 3159 told us in 413163 OIS, it says OHA is going to build the registry data system for 413164, which is 413164 is defines that providers, insurers, and CCOs will need to collect REALD and SOGI data using that system per the 2134 SOGI, REALD and SOGI standards. So it's a little can be kind of confusing, but the main thing is today we're focusing on REALD and SOGI data collection standards, and providers, insurers, and CCOs do not need to submit this data until we have the registry built, which is going to be down the road. So we will have another rulemaking process for defining when and how exceptions, extension for sending that data. We will have another rulemaking process for that part later, but not in this RAC. Because we really need to know what the system looks like first. Yes, so Sally asked to confirm that providers are not obligated, not unless you have a different contractual agreement with OHA. Under 3159, you're not obligated to send until the registry is built. If there's another contractual agreement that you have with OHA, that would be different. That specifies you need to send us the data. If you don't have a contractual agreement that specifies you need to send us the data, you don't need to worry about it until there's a registry is built. If that makes sense, I just want to make sure we're all clear about that.
Marjorie, there was one question in the chat. So to confirm, providers are not obligated to send REALD data until the registry is built? That's the question.
Right, I just answered. They're not obligated until we
got it.
Unless there's a contractual agreement. Otherwise, so if there's a separate contractual agreement signed with the agency saying you would send us the data, then you send us the data. But it wouldn't be to the registry because we don't have a registry, so it would be in a different format. And then there's a question. Just tribe for Nick. It would just be tribes. It wouldn't be all indigenous people outside of Oregon, in Oregon or outside of Oregon. It would just be the 9 federally recognized tribes that are part of the government to government relationship that we have. And they would be the ones deciding the tribal questions. It wouldn't be anyone else. And we have to respect that relationship that we have with tribes. So I appreciate the question and support. So now I'm going to turn it over to Kwaku, who will tell you a little bit more about the registry and FIRE. Thank you.
Thank you, Marjorie, and good morning to all of you, and welcome to the second RAC as well. My presentation will focus on what Marjorie just started, the requirements for House Bill 3159, which we also call the Data Justice Act, and then our plans to leverage existing technologies, technological applications specifically to improve the efficiency in data collection through the registry, as well as reduce reporting entities' administrative burden. I want to highlight that. So House Bill 3159 and the specific sections of the associated Oregon revised statutes listed on this slide specify requirements for OHA and the data reporting entities, including CCOs, health insurers, and providers. OHA will build a registry, a REALD and SOGI registry, and components of the registry will be a repository. And this will help improve the quality of demographic data collection. The registry must include functionalities that allow reporting entities to query current demographic information of clients and members. Patients and members can also access the registry environment to submit and update personal information. The data reporting entities must report data at least once a year. And we highlighted additional reporting details in our first RAC meeting during our presentation. And while some of those components of House Bill 3159 are out of scope for this RAC, as Marjorie mentioned, we're planning a future RAC to discuss some of those details. And so stay tuned as we get there. Next slide, please. If you are wondering about the value of the REALD and SOGI registry we've been talking about, then this slide highlights how the registry will improve reporting efficiency, reduce reporting burden, and improve data quality. Specifically, House Bill 2134, again, which Marjorie talked about, passed in 2013, required OHA and ODHS to develop data reporting standards and track compliance with collecting and storing REALD demographic information in data sets in OHA and ODHS. So the slide, as you see there, about 30 different data systems in OHA that require reporting entities to use demographic information and report data using different standards to OHA. The systems, therefore, also store different types of demographic information. I hope you can imagine how the existing design and requirements create inefficiencies, increase reporting burden, and contribute to poor quality demographic information, which is what we seek to address. By creating a single reporting portal, the REALD and SOGI registry will streamline demographic data reporting, reduce reporting entities' burden, as well as standardize the formats that the data will be reported. And we hope this moves us more closer to having more quality and complete REALD and SOGI demographic information and sharing the data across systems so that we can all improve how we utilize demographic data information in our respective functions. So I will expand on this idea in the next couple of slides, including how we're planning to leverage existing technologies for the reporting. Thank you. A fully developed and implemented REALD and SOGI registry will interface with providers' EHR systems and will leverage the fast healthcare interoperability resource, FHIR specifically, and other application programming interfaces, APIs, to help facilitate reporting of data to OHA. The registry and component repository will leverage the data received from multiple systems to improve the quality and completeness of demographic data, and also ensure that we can collectively share this data back to internal agency providers, internal agency systems, as well as provider systems operating externally to OHA to improve culturally appropriate patient-centered care, and then also use the data to identify address inequities and make data-informed decisions. Next slide. So this visual shows how the transport mechanisms of FHIR, which I mentioned in the previous slide, and other APIs can help bridge reporting entities' reporting requirements to OHA. So the FHIR application is highlighted in the violet section. So it will also have a component FHIR server, which will collectively bridge the reporting requirements by interfacing with reporting entities' EHR systems. And this will help to transform data from the EHR systems to meet REALD and SOGI requirements. This process will begin by publishing REALD and SOGI standards and questions in a FHIR format. And so these will provide the parameters for REALD and SOGI response values. And using the FHIR API interface, a non-REALD and SOGI compliant EHR would access the REALD and SOGI questions, record the answers in alignment with the response value parameters, and then return this data to OHA. So this is what this visual captures in the process format. The registry will have flexibility to interface with other provider and client-facing applications as well. And the repository, which is a component of the registry, will help improve the quality and value of the data received through the registry. We want to highlight that this technology solution can apply to reporting entities' requirements to report OMB data, self-management and budget data compliant formats to meet their federal requirements as well. So this is how we are envisioning how the registry, when fully implemented, will help to reduce the reporting burden for providers. We are working with consultants at the Oregon Health and Science University who are at an advanced stage of implementing FHIR for reporting REALD and SOGI data. And so we will publish additional details about FHIR as a technology solution on our website shortly. And we hope to continue this conversation in subsequent RAC as well as in the future RAC, which will be convened when the registry is fully developed and operational. Back to you, Marjorie. Thanks.
Thank you. And there's a question in here about assumes that Oregon data will be assumed in AHR where OHA have parallel processing for providers who don't have the EHR. Yes, we will have that. It will not be one, it won't be just one way of the data coming in. It's multiple ways that the data can come in. But we know that a big concern for providers is the challenge of the EHR system. And so that's why we've been working really hard to see what we can do to mitigate that challenge. Thank you. So I just wanted to, last time there were some questions in the breakout rooms about open tests and what you do with it. So go ahead to the next slide. The idea of the open text questions is that people describe themselves accurately and in known words, and want to clarify that, for example, for race ethnicity question, there was also a comment about nationality. And so for the race ethnicity question, it says, how do you identify your race, ethnicity, tribal affiliation, country of origin, or ancestry? That's not intended to ask about nationality or country of origin. It's just a prompt. And this was discussed quite a bit in 2013. To how do we elicit, the information? So it's a prompt, it's an open-ended, but we don't really have the mandate to be asking about country of origin or nationality. That there's actually another statute that would prohibit us from doing that. So this is just a prompt. It's just to focus to have people answer the question. But from that, we can identify emerging categories and to think about who's missing from the subgroups. And it also helps us do imputations for missing responses. And so I wanted to go ahead and show you an example. Next slide, please. And this may be hard to see, and I'll talk it out. And if anyone's ever interested to learn more about this, you can email us and we will be happy to share more information. But in this case, you know, we have the question about indigenous, Mexican, Central or South American. We create a variable called RE, meaning race, ethnicity, Latin, Indian. We keep it short for the software requirement. We create that variable RELATIND. And if the open text contains Mayan or Aztec or Candoba, there's probably about 20 words that we have identified. If it contains any of those, we mark it as a 1, as yes, indigenous, Mexican, Central American, or South American. Tableau Prep is a freebie that comes with Tableau Desktop. And so it's a handy tool. And if any of you are using Tableau and you want to replicate this, email us and happy to share the scripts. We also have similar in other formats, but can't promise that it will be as comprehensive as what we have in Tableau. But that's how we deal with open text. Same idea for disability, you know. So if they say ADHD, it's just you look at the whole text and say if that word contains ADHD, map it as this. If it contains this, and then you see who. And we created new variables to isolate, and so that we can look at those emerging categories. That's something we do with the data that we get. Not necessarily that you have to do on your site, but if you really want to look at what's happening, it's a great idea. And again, we can help provide some technical assistance on how you might do that. What I wanted to show, another question that came up last time, and I'm going to share my screen, that came up last time was about the language list. And let's see if I can do this right. Do you see the itself? I need affirmation.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. If you look, we have and Renee hopefully is here or will be here soon and can demonstrate, but if she's not, we'll come back to Renee in a few minutes. But here are the ISO codes in the second column. And there are over 7,000 using the 639-3, I believe. Here are the names that are associated. We even created for those languages that are most commonly associated with Spanish speakers, we even have a Spanish translation. And the reason we have this is because we are using this in our one system, in our Medicaid system. We're using this smart filtering. And so that, and we also have these flags. Is it a spoken language? Is it written? Is it a living language? Is it active, etc.? We have, this is what a data architect would take. Many of the EHR systems already have these embedded. And so the nice thing is if we just start filtering, and maybe I can just show this way. Let's do Arabic. When you start, if you started typing on Arabic, you would see all these options. And then you could select, the person would select what is the most accurate Arabic, preferred language in Arabic. same thing, like we have many indigenous languages in here. And we've been using this since April of 2022 in the Medicaid system, in the one system, eligibility system. And it's been amazing because all of a sudden now we have much more specificity. So Renee, are you ready to share how it works in the patient-facing survey tool?
I am, yeah.
Go
Okay.
ahead, take it.
Okay, share my screen. I wondered how much of a lead would everyone like to see to the before the actual functionality that we're talking about here? Should I start from the beginning or just jump in with the language?
Well, I guess you could share how we even came up with the patient-facing survey tour, and then jump in with the language.
Okay, yeah, I'm happy to do that. So, hi everyone, my name is Renee Harter, she, her pronouns, and I work with Marjorie, Kweku, Colleen, and others from the REALD and SOGI division in E&I. I work under the title of Data Equity and Registry Specialist. Before I was in this role, I worked in a different division in OHA on implementation of REALD associated with COVID-19 encounters under House Bill 4212 that was passed in 2020, which is part of the pandemic response. So my job was to help get the data from providers with a reporting requirement into OHA. And it was tech focused, but also ended up being a lot of operational guidance and direction as well. So from that experience working with providers, submitting REALD data with COVID-19 encounters, we learned a couple of important lessons, in particularly challenges, and they revolved around the tech, the ability for providers to integrate these fields into their EHR, the ability or the inability for providers to integrate REALD fields into their EHR systems, to be able to capture the data, store the data, extract the data, and send the data to OHA, and the operations piece, capacity to learn adequately about REALD, to be able to share the importance and the reason for REALD, why they were asking their patients REALD, and explain that in such a way that the patients understood and felt comfortable self-reporting their data. One of the pieces of feedback that addresses both this tech challenge and the operations challenge was a patient-facing survey tool. This was asked for indirectly and directly by providers, that it would be great to have a patient-facing survey tool so that patients could self-report their own data more independently, with less staff time, potentially. And it addresses the technology barrier in that it bypasses the provider system. So patients have access to this tool through a QR code or bit.ly link that they access directly from their own device, whether it's a smartphone, a tablet, whatever. So they just need internet connection. They click on the link or scan the QR code and they're brought to the tool. And this is not the landing page. This is the language page. Anyway, I've gone through a few of the pages so far. But anyway, that's kind of the background for this tool. Getting back to the tech piece, this tool, how it addresses the tech challenges. Once the patient has this questionnaire pulled up on their device or a provided device from the clinic, they go through the questionnaire, and then there's a submit button at the end, submit it, and the data are extracted into a CSV file and sent directly to OHA. So it completely removes the provider system from.
And Renee, did you talk about, can you scroll down on your screen? Because I thought we had smart filtering in here.
Yeah, we do.
Other. So if
Yeah,
they put
absolutely.
in other, how does that work? Can you share?
Yeah, so I have skipped through a couple pages here. We've got a landing page that's before your information. have a your information page to collect like name, address, date of birth, contact information. Race and ethnicity is next, and I'm here at language. So there's a short list of languages here. And if a person picks English, that's the end of this page. But if they pick English plus another language or another language other than English, such as Hmong or Russian or something else, this is where the smart filtering is. They would pick other if the language that they speak is not listed in this short list. So this is where the smart filtering is. And so trying to see like what is a language, you can see it's kind of pulling up something already. But if I type in, so it starts pulling up languages that are included in the list of over 7,000 that have this combination, this letter combination in it. So I'm blanking on a language here that's not listed, but
so thank you, Renee. So we can go back to the other slide presentation, but the whole point is that the open text should not be a barrier in the utility. Is that we can work with, and especially with the advent of AI, it's the problem. And Nick, you mentioned about Tableau, if it was for Levenstein. The problem is you can't let go of the controls too much because it does make mistakes. So you have to. That's why we're kind of specific, and we have an iterative process because it will misassign people if you give up too much control, and that's just something we have to, with AI, gonna have to keep an eye on that as well. But the whole point is when we have the disability open text, when we have the language list. I think the question last time was language list that about some of the indigenous languages and decolonization. This is where we've shifted over to create these tools so that we can be all inclusive. Yeah. Okay. I think are there any other follow-up? There's one more follow-up question. And then we're a couple more. So there was a question about the caregiver definition. There was a concern that this has legal connotations in provider settings. And so we're working to try and clarify. We do not intend a legal definition. We basically intend that the person who's with the person who's helping the person fill out the question. That's what we intend. So we need to figure out the language with DOJ and guidance so that we're not having a legalistic definition that would make it difficult. The other clarifications we found that the feds, including HRSA, using the UDS, they usually focus on what is reported. They set up the requirements. You have to give us in these categories, or we need this data. But they don't get into prescribing how the data is collected. One of the concerns that, and they talk about it in the OMB, one of the concerns is being a burden on states and other entities and being prescriptive. And so they just focus on what is reported to them instead of trying to tell all the states, local jurisdiction on how to actually do the data collection. They don't get into that level of detail. There is one exception though that we learned, and that's outside of HHS. It's with the FDA, Food Drug Administration with SNAP. SNAP requires ethnicity to be asked first and then race. And so we encountered that in our Medicaid system, and we have a solution for that. But that's the only federal entity that I know that has been very prescriptive. And it's only on the race, the separation of race and ethnicity. And they actually say, you have to ask this question first, and then you ask this question next. And that's it. So, and that will probably change because the OMB is, that is likely to change. There's been discussion on the OMB moving to a combined race ethnicity approach. And so that will probably change what SNAP does then. But that's been a problem for us in the Medicaid system. We'll go to the next slide. There's a couple of more clarifications. So we think about non-responses, like passive non-responses and active non-responses. And I want to clarify some terms here. The passive non-response is that, you know, they didn't answer the question. It wasn't, they were not asked, it's missing or blank. They didn't answer. There's nothing there. That's a passive non-response. An active non-response is someone saying, I don't know. I don't know the answer to this question, which is different than a blank or missing. You know, I know, no, don't know. I don't know the answer to the question. And it could be the caregiver who's answering the question on behalf, or the parent or someone. I don't know. Or it could be the person themselves. I don't know the answer to this question. The other is I don't want to say, I decline, or I don't understand this question. But they're actually responding, right? It's an active response. They're saying something here. That's really good information. So it's an active response. Some of our categories include the word questioning. And questioning is not a non-response. It's actually a response also. And it's saying, I'm still exploring this. I don't know how I you know, if I'm gay or lesbian or this, or that. I'm exploring this. So questioning is different than I don't know. So these are the, so just want to be clear, this is the distinction. And this is great from a data quality perspective, because if you have a lot of people who say, I don't understand this question, that tells you what you can do with it. And maybe we need to do some education, and maybe the question is too hard, or etc. That response has been showing up mostly in the SOGI context, because some people don't know, right? Some of the questions about transgender, I don't understand this question. So that's what that is, which is different than I don't know, because I don't know, it's a different, it gives us tools to do better data quality and CQI, depending on these responses. And I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to, let me check and see if there's any chats. To Claire. Thank you.
Hi, all. We are now going to transition into working on our breakout groups. Today, we're going to be doing 2 rounds of breakouts with the intention that folks will be able to switch to another group at the break and be able to contribute to more than one topic today. In the breakout groups, please make sure to make room for the folks with subject matter expertise and those with lived experiences to contribute to the conversation. If you find yourself wanting to understand more, right, feel free to reach out to the staff in the chat, and we can provide more resources and info offline. We are going to have 5 groups today. The first group is a race and ethnicity group, and that group is going to be considering the criteria for adding new categories, as well as the data relevant to the question of whether and how to add a Jewish ethnicity category. The second group is going to be language and disability, and that group's going to be considering questions regarding interpreter services as well as the disability open text question. Then we're going to have a SOGI for adults group, which is going to be considering the criteria for adding SOGI subgroups, as well as the current categories offered as response options. Then we'll have our SOGI pediatrics group, which is going to be considering how well the OARs reflect age-appropriate data collection practices for minors, what is appropriate to ask younger minors about sexual orientation, how we navigate parental or caregiver presence, and other privacy concerns. And then last, but certainly not least, we have a SOGI names and sex group, which is going to be considering whether we should have a section of rules dedicated to collecting data about current and past names of individuals, how we should ask about past names or names in other contexts, and if or how we should ask about sex assigned at birth. Each group is going to have a staff moderator who will provide a brief overview relating to the questions and then be on hand to answer any questions as needed. We ask that each group assign a group facilitator as well as a note taker. And that note taker is going to use the notes to report back to the large group when we return. And we ask that that report back be in the form of either pasting a Word document into the chat box for us or just pasting text into the chat box for us so that we can review those notes after the meeting today. So your primary task in the breakout group is going to be to answer the breakout session questions, and your staff person who is in your room will share their screen and show the detailed questions in the room itself. Reminder, we are going to ask folks to report back in the chat box when we come back, so please ensure that you do your best to have good notes. I see a hand up. What's the question?
Yeah. Hi, Claudia. She, her. I'm from the Coalition of Communities of Color. Yeah, I wanted to ask about the race and ethnicity group, because I know that we had a lot of conversation last meeting in regards to some changes that need to happen in the MENA category. And so I don't want to lose that discussion and that need for change in that category. So I'm just wondering, if not today, are there going to be opportunities for us to continue that conversation?
Yeah, so I would say bring that to the staff who are leading that group, because they're going to be the ones that are best informed about the status of those conversations. But the brief answer is going to be that I don't think that we have closed the door on that conversation at all. I just don't think it's the agenda for the conversations today. But the staff in that room can certainly give you more context there.
Okay, great. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
No worries at all. No worries at all. So what we're going to do is we're going to do about 45 minutes in the first round of breakouts. So we'll go pick a room to go to for 45 minutes. We are then going to take a 10-minute break. I will ask that the note taker, before going on the break, post your notes in the large group chat. And then when we come back from break, you can pick a different room to go to, and we'll do another 45 minutes. So folks will have opportunities to contribute to more than one conversation.
So I just wanted to pop in and say, since we're running about 10 minutes ahead of schedule, that means that we'll start the breakout. We'll open up the breakout rooms, and you'll be in there until 10:40. And then we'll take a 10-minute break. So you go into the first breakout session until 10:40. We have a 10-minute break, come back at 10:50, and then enter your next 45-minute session.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Colleen. And then whoever's driving the Zoom, if you'd be willing to post the opportunity for folks to select into a breakout session. Thank you so much.
They're open. There should be a pop-up for you to enter. There is a pop-up.
I see it.
Thank you.
Hey, Colleen, can you hear me? It's Shannon.
I can hear you.
Hey there. Hey, when
Hey.
are they coming back from session 1?
It was 45 minutes. We have about
10:40.
17 minutes.
10:40? Okay,
Yeah, about 17 minutes.
okay. I've got a 10:30, so I might not come back at 10:40, but anyway, we'll try to for
Okay.
sure rejoin and we go till noon.
Okay.
All right.
Sounds good. I'll keep an
Thanks,
eye out.
guys.
Thanks.
Bye.
Uh-huh.
Hi, this is Jonathan Froxwijk. I had to step away and was just able to come back. Would it be possible to assign me to a breakout room?
Jonathan, Sareka, are you here? What's that? Jonathan just asked a question and asked to be assigned for the breakout room. He had just stepped away. Jonathan, we are just about to finish up. We're in the last 5 minutes of a breakout.
We're actually in the last minute and a half.
Oh, don't worry about it then. I'll just sit
Okay.
tight until people come back to the main room. Sorry for
No worries.
messing
And
it up.
Yeah, and just supporting Sreka, there will be a second breakout session coming up. I did share in the chat. We'll have a break until 10:50 and then coming back from 10:50 to 11:35.
Or is it with the same groups?
Oh,
I'm sorry.
I don't know the answer to that question.
Okay, because I have to.
No, it's different groups.
Okay. Can you guys message me on the chat? I'm confused. Thanks.
Kim, this is Colleen N. I believe the groups stay the same, but people have the option to jump into a different group. I think that's what it is.
Thank you for clarifying, Colleen. Yeah, that's what I meant.
So that people, so for Jonathan kind of waiting, the people in each of the groups, race, ethnicity, there's 5 different groups. Those people might want to be able to comment and talk to a different topic. And so instead of just staying constantly in the same group, the questions asked in each of the rooms will be the same. So that way you get to.
Okay, I'm gonna have to type in all the groups again. Just letting you all know I have to do that.
I think we can also share them as well. Like I have that slide. I could go back to that slide as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Jump back and forth.
It's okay. I just have to reset up the breakout rooms again because they close.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I think
hi,
people
this
are
is
coming
Antoinette.
back.
Can you hear me? Can you hear me? This is Antoinette. Can you hear me?
Yes, Antoinette,
Yes.
we can hear you.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Maybe you didn't hear me before. I was saying that I was calling from my phone, not via Zoom. And when you're calling from your phone, there's no way to know, like, what breakout room to go to. So I've just been waiting here until the breakout room folks resume and join the regular call. Just so you know, there's just no way for you to know which room to go to. I'm on the road, that's why.
Yes, yeah, thank you so much. We do have the ability to assign you a room. So how about after our break when we're going to and letting people who are on the Zoom able to just hit the button, to go to their room, we'll make sure we get you where we'll assign for you where you'd like to go. How about that?
Oh, okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll try that. Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome.
Hello, everybody. I welcome back from your first breakout session. I want everybody to know that now we're going to go into a 10-minute break. And so next slide, please, Colleen. And then we will come back into your second breakout session at 10:50. And you'll be in there for 45 minutes and it'll end automatically. And this is a great opportunity to choose, as Cliff mentioned before, choose a different breakout session and have a different discussion with a different group. And so we'll self-select. It'll be available for you all to do that at 10:50. So see you then.
Okay, I'm not sure what I did, but I'm gonna have to have a minute to put in the rooms again.
No worries at all.
Okay.
It's a very unique use case for the breakout rooms since we're wanting to join different rooms, so no worries. Welcome back, everybody. It's been about 10 minutes. We're just going to take another minute or two, possibly a few more minutes, just to reorient the breakout rooms, and then we will open them back up just like the beginning of this past breakout session, and you'll be able to select a new group. Oh, wow. That's great. That was fast, Rika. Thank you. So here we are. The rooms are now available for all of you to self-select into another room or the same one. So
If you need assistance being assigned to a room, just let me know. If you have a phone number, or you can private chat me, or
Yes, so Rega, the Antoinette is on the phone and she needs to be assigned to a room.
did Antoinette have a preference for which room?
yeah, if
And
Not
Antoinette,
sure.
can you hear us? Do you have a preference for the room? Do you need us to read to you
Yes.
what the rooms are?
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so I think you're supposed to give me a number, and then with my keyboard, I can just enter the number and get into a breakout room, because I'm calling from my phone.
Okay, well, I'll read you the rooms. Number 1 is race, ethnicity. Number 2 is language and disability. Number 3 is SOGI adults. Number 4 is SOGI pediatrics. And number 5 is names and sex.
Okay, how about number 3, SOGI adult?
Okay. Well, you know what we'll do? We'll just have Sareka add you specifically, just so you don't have any difficulty.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
So I'm ready whenever you are.
Thank you. Great, we got her in.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. How is everybody else doing in the main room here? Do you need any help us being assigned to a room?
No, I'm just trying to figure out my life.
I can relate. Okay. Seth and Leslie and Katie. Do you all need to be Seth jumped, so now we just have Leslie.
I'm sorry, my screen was talking. I didn't hear the question.
No, you're good.
No worries. I just asked,
You just
do you
let
want
me know whenever I can ask. I'm patient.
do you want me to assign you to another group, or are you able to join the group that you want?
I think I should be able to join, but I want to be in the SOGI pediatrics to hear what folks have to say and the changes they would make.
Thank you. I will add you now. All right, we did it.
Great job. Shannon, I see you joined. Everyone has just jumped into the breakout group. So if you feel like being there, otherwise the main room is going to be silent for 45 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just hang out and multitask.
Okay.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks.
Same here.
I'm going to swap into a different room because we just had one person in the breakout room this time.
Ah, okay.
Me also, but I'm trying to figure out how to do it. I'm not real technologically inclined.
I understand. Would you both like to be added to the SOGI adults group?
I would love that. Thank you.
Okay, great. It'll happen in just one moment. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Welcome back from your second breakout group. We'll let folks file in. And we have about 20 minutes for a debrief as a group, which Cliff will lead.
Thank you so much. Sorry, it was taking me a moment. I was typing a message to a participant because we did get cut off right there at the end of in the middle of a sentence. So we'll come back to that. But yes, thank you so much, everybody, for participating in the breakout groups. I don't know how all the other groups went, but I know in the ones that I was in today, the conversations were absolutely fantastic. Some really tremendous feedback, and I can't thank you all enough for that. I do want to take a moment and prompt anybody who volunteered to be note takers to please post in the chat some version of your notes, right? So whether it's copy and paste or saving a Word file or whatever the case might be, please do paste your notes in some format into the meeting chat so that we can use those to inform and add to our own notes and help us to prepare where we need further discussion in the next session, right? So that being said, since we do have a little bit of time here, I do want to go through these groups one at a time and see if we have folks that are willing to say a little bit about, right, what was a major point or a major takeaway or a major development that you saw in your group. And we'll start with the race and ethnicity breakout group. So while folks are posting, if we have anyone who is part of the race and ethnicity conversations, either the first one or the second one, and is willing to share a little bit about here is one of our major takeaways. Any volunteers there?
I suppose I can start because I have the privilege of the notes in front of me, but feel free others to jump in. We had a couple of different main conversations. I think one was around the process and the criteria for including, new groups. And there were some questions about order of operations in terms of considering some very real process questions, including, equity in who gets to come to the table and when and how it's prioritized versus answering the question at hand, which was the inclusion of the Jewish, the Jewish identity categories. And so we have some notes and some action items on that. We did affirm, because some of the questions were around how strong is the cultural identity and community organization within the Jewish community, and affirm that generally speaking, yes, there is. It's not always necessarily organized around health the way it is in other communities, and there already are some recognized health differences and disparities in health outcome, particularly on the way that there's a number of cancers that have higher rates in certain Jewish sub-ethnicities, and those are known issues, but aren't necessarily tracked in our systems or particularly in cancer registries. We talked about adding Jewish ethnicity in the context of MENA and other race ethnicity categories that haven't been as robustly disaggregated, and questions about equity and fairness in terms of that. And again, we have a number of action items on that, particularly in the context of, and I apologize, I'm getting this wrong because this was before my time on the committee, that there have been some times when further disaggregating MENA has not been fully addressed by the committee, and sort of bringing up that in that context. Again, more stuff around, just the importance of even groups that are comparatively small in number, of having that counted, what we're going to do with the data once it is collected. We also did clarify that, back to the original question of if Jewish ethnicity was going to be added to the form, should it be added in what had been called option 1, which was have it be subcategories of, I believe, white and MENA, versus having it be its own category with sub-identities within that, such as Sephardi and Ashkenazi and Mizrahi, that the general consensus based on some work within the Jewish community was that it would be its own category of Jewish with subcategories. And I think that was the highlights. I'm going to post more of the notes in the chat and also email them to the committee as well so they can be part of the record.
Thank you all so much.
Can I just quickly add to Amy's very robust notes? And Andres, I think you may have also had some notes, so feel free to jump in. But a main takeaway that the group decided on is to do some more community engagement around these questions, specifically in the Jewish community and in the MENA community, and bring those recommendations from community back to this group at either the next or the final meeting of the RAC.
Great.
And I also only took notes for the first half, so I definitely want to give Andres some time to share what I assume is more robust notes from the second half.
I think that was it. We just need a little bit more time to engage folks, and then we added the other thing too is that we thinking about how community should be added to this should be based upon one of the criteria should also be of how certain community-based organizations are popping up across our state and serving certain communities whose needs are not being met, and that they should also be considered not regardless of size, but in the same way that we're considering population size, and that OHA should be more accountable to the ways in which they themselves are hearing from specific community groups they are not being served in certain ways, and that accountability list should be included in rules making in the future.
Thank you, Andre.
Andres. And there was also the consideration for the criteria that we want to ensure that trust is always preserved, both on the front end in the clinic or in service contexts, and also with the results that come out of analyses, that trust is always a key consideration in these thoughts of what we do and don't include as response options.
Thank you so much. Let's move on to the language and disability groups. Do we have anybody from those groups who would like to share some key takeaways from those conversations?
We had a good discussion. I'd like to invite the people from that group to please chime in.
This is Katie. I was in the second breakout group, and we talked about whether there would be some confusion about communication, some confusion about interpreter services and the value of being able to say whether there was, they either asked for them and also whether they received them. We thought that that was important because there sometimes can be confusion about for different languages. And we had an example of where sometimes what comes up as the requested language is actually referred to more as the state name versus what the actual language is called. And so that has created confusion at times for patients and providers. And so that's why there's the importance of being able to add the question of have that alternative of being able to ask whether they asked for them and whether they also received them. We also discussed about whether there's the value of adding at this facility to the question as well. So it's not whether they've just received them in the past at their last appointment, which could have been anywhere, but at that specific facility. Then we also talked about adding some different options for other things, whether someone receives needs to receive sign language services, or and then changing it so that way instead of saying sign language in another language, but saying a different form of sign language, because there are many different types of sign language that are technically from the same language. For example, Spanish, where there would be Mexican Sign Language versus Argentinian Sign Language, and they would be different requests that someone would need to specify. And then on the disability open text question, we did think that there was a lot of value to adding this to it. But then we thought it would be important to rephrase it instead of saying, if you identify as someone with a disability or physical, mental, emotional, cognitive, or an intellectual condition, instead of saying, please tell us about it, which seemed a little bit demanding, say, please tell us what you would like us to know, because we thought that the framing of that would make it a little bit more optional. And then for people, it could be more specific to the provider or the situation or appointment they're in, especially for individuals who may not identify as somebody who with a disability, but may have some limitations where it would be important for specific types of providers to know. The patient would have kind of a softer invitation to share that based on the situation. And then we also talked about whether in this question it would be better to use disability, which could be a strong word for some, but use differently abled, and you might get that's kind of that idea of that softer invitation again.
Thank you so
That's all I
much.
have.
I think.
And from the second group, the first group on language and disability, do you want to share?
This is Kristen. I would say we had a bit higher level of conversation and really wanting to ground ourselves in the intent and objective. Trying to understand, are we collecting this information for OHA to know and understand whether or not people are, for instance, consistently able to access interpreter services? Or is this something that we are trying to create so that providers, payers, or state agencies are able to adjust behavior to accommodate in real time access to interpreter services or other language supports? So we had a really meaningful conversation there, and I actually heard some themes of that in the second group I was in as well, really trying to ground ourselves and making sure that the data we're collecting, that we're clear around what the objective of the collection of that data is for, and that we're able to ensure that if people are trusting us and providing this information, that we're able to be actionable and addressing any kind of concerns or information that they give us as close to real time as possible.
Thank you so much for those highlights. We really appreciate it. Let's turn to the SOGI for Adults group. If we have anybody from the first session that'd be willing to share some highlights, I would really appreciate it.
I was the note taker, so I suppose it makes sense for me to share. I think the biggest takeaway really was we would like to see some alignment with the SOGI questions in terms of the format that REALD questions have, where people have the option to first self-identify with an open text before they have to select the categories that we have assigned. And so we felt like that would be a really good place to start. And then additionally, I'm trying to remember if there was any, I think that was the one big takeaway from it, that was having the format be similar to that. And we think that potentially there are categories that we haven't even thought of that might show up when we give people the option for that free text.
Thank you so much. And anyone from the second SOGI for Adults group?
I can present out since I was the note taker. We talked about, we discussed listing identities like gender fluid and gender queer. And I think generally agreed that offering more options is better unless we're not able to roll up those options for data analysis purposes. So agreed that more options is better on the end user side, but we would need to have a plan for rolling those up into potentially the non-binary category. We talked about the current gender identity options available, and some smaller changes such as using less institutional language, like we had a conversation about the word specify and how understandable is that, and maybe using some more plain language like not listed, period, my gender is, colon. And then under sexual orientation recommendations, we ran out of time, but started having a conversation about same gender loving and same sex loving, and wanting to make sure that recognizing that same gender loving is a culturally specific term, mostly used in the Black African American community, wanting to make sure that the inclusion of both same gender loving and same sex loving was actually affirming culturally specific terms and not just making a distinction between gender and sex, because none of us in that group had heard the term same sex loving used, even though we understand why the term same gender loving could be confusing to someone not from a community that uses that term. I think I about encapsulated that. Does anyone else from the group want to chime in?
Wonderful. Thanks so much, Jonathan, for those highlights. Really appreciate it. And then we will turn to the SOGI pediatrics group. I think that only met for the first session because it was combined with the adults for the second session. So anyone from that first session that's willing to share some highlights?
Yeah, I'm happy to speak on that as Anthony Fox from HealthShare. I guess first and foremost, I was really surprised at the really low turnout. I think in both sessions, that really sort of surprised me. And I just really want to just lead with concern for members. You know, I think given the fact that there's no confidentiality that is guaranteed for youth that disclose SOGI identity. You know, parents and guardians might access it, and you know, if they're present, just really want to highlight the potential harm, whether emotional, physical, threat of homelessness, etc., that could result from these questions. I just want to note that initially. There's a sense from the clinicians and clinical leadership that I have spoken to that their voices have not been adequately heard and considered in this conversation, and that peds are frequently underrepresented in these kinds of conversations. So just want to flag that and put out the ask that those experts are considered with in ongoing conversations around this. So I think more broadly, given the real threats to youth disclosing this information and the kind of pressure that's put on them in these sorts of settings, which should be a safe space for youth, right? We just have the question around, what the specific expectations and goals of this data is, what positive outcomes can we expect specifically from SOGI data for those under 18? And are those expected positive outcomes worth the risk and burden that we'll place on youth in putting them in the position to answer these questions? Let me see, I'm taking a look at my notes here. Yeah, so again, just really leading with concern. I think it's, I think myself and those that I'm trying to represent here, this sort of clinical perspective, we of course understand and appreciate the desire to build a demographic understanding of this population to better serve them, to understand disparities, but it appears to us that the sort of pressures that we place youth under in these circumstances and real threat of harm is considerable and should be strongly weighed. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there for now.
Thank you, Anthony. we will certainly take note of all of those concerns and use them to inform our future discussions. Let's hear now from the first group for the SOGI names and sex breakout group.
Hi, Cliff. This is Matt. And I was a note taker for that group, and I will just highlight a couple of things. So we were looking at two questions. We were looking at the naming question and then the sex question, particularly question number 6. So on the naming questions, a couple of the key questions that we spent time looking at. One was to really be clear about how the data is going to be used, and that we needed clarity around how the names could potentially show up or appear in different contexts, and that we need to be really careful when we're gathering folks' names, that they're used in ways that are supportive and safe, and that we don't accidentally, for instance, dead name someone or identify someone's name in a way that's not respectful in different contexts. And then I think perhaps the other main conversation we had focused on the protocols around the framing of the names. So for instance, identifying first name, middle name, last name, but that's sort of a Western kind of white supremacist sort of traditional formatting that certainly probably works well with many of our systems, but doesn't necessarily work well with different cultural frameworks around how names are used. And so we spent time thinking about that. In terms of the sex, the question around sex at birth, broadly speaking, I think folks recognized in our group that it was really valuable in particularly medical and clinical settings and hospitals. I think we struggled a little bit with sort of how to use the categorical responses given limitations on birth certificates right now, and even sort of shifts around what options are available on birth certificates, wondering about, can you change your identifier on a birth certificate? How does that impact data collection? And then, yeah, I think those were the major kind of themes from the first group that we met with, and I'll turn things over to Kanya for the second group.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. Yeah, so we again went over the same questions, but also actually kind of brought up some of the pieces from the previous discussion as well. It has a bonus question, so I'll try to be fast. So first, we were talking a lot about like the privacy concerns, about like the concerns about dead naming. And I think like the biggest point in that discussion was, in this whole discussion, is that there is like already a system set up for like folks who change their name, in terms of like when people get married and their name changes, like one of the folks there was like their like previous name doesn't come up. Like there are ways in which like the correct name comes up, but those data are still like connected. So we were discussing that. We were also discussing the concern of like different characters, and how in certain data sets, if you do not have English or like English type characters, your name gets messed up, or your data gets messed up because your name gets misspelled, and that's difficult to match up. So we were talking about that in regards to like people people giving their name and like previous names to like keep in mind that we need to fix that problem. We also talked about we also talked about like the first, middle, last name, and if that was appropriate, and we came to the conclusion of that there should be like an open text option that just asks like, what name do you use, and you can put one name, because some people just only go by one name, and then Or you could use like 5 names. Yeah, given name, family name. And then yeah, and then there was a discussion or a discussion that was had previously about having like a drop down menu for folks who choose intersex. And we thought that that wasn't necessary. And also, but that in like the certain list, keeping like the write-in like other please specify write-in option was important, because some people from different cultures have different names for describing themselves. So we want them to be able to do that. And then if I could just like really quick go back to like the SOGI adults, just say one thing in terms of like utilizing the in-text option to self-describe your sexuality or your gender identity before like clicking the option, before clicking the multi-select options like in REALD. I feel like the importance of that is because I don't think that the options that were given in terms of like what is the criteria for adding or changing categories were really sufficient. And I think yeah, sorry. I think that using that in-text option can allow for a criteria to be built from that existing data. Okay, yeah, that's.
Thank you so much, everybody, for all of the feedback here. It's been tremendously helpful. As I just mentioned in the chat, I apologize that we've gone over, but the thoughtfulness of everyone's contributions has been tremendously helpful. And all of your feedback is going to help us to make this process and the end resulting, the resulting standards better, right, and more inclusive. And so we appreciate everybody's contributions here. I'm going to turn it over to Colleen for next steps and some closing.
Next slide, please. Just a quick reminder that our next upcoming RAC meeting is going to be in a couple of weeks on Friday, December 15th from 1 to 4 p.m. I know we hardly ever have enough time in these meetings, but if you have any other questions or things that might have come up, you can email this email address, our general email box. And we also have one more meeting coming up on January 12th, 2024 from 9 to 12. And I appreciate everybody noting some relevant breakout session follow-up tasks and questions to then bring back with more information the next time that we meet. All right, over to you, Cliff. Close us out.
Yeah, so we always close with the opening the floor for you all to, in chat, tell us what went well today and what could be improved. You can also use the email address that was just shared in the chat, our general box, to respond to those feedback prompts as well. That is it for today. Thank you so much, everyone, and we really look forward to continuing this conversation and continuing to improve these standards with you in our next meeting. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you all. Have a good day.
We can stop live streaming and we'll stay on just a few more minutes for people to put in the chat what went well and what could be improved. Thank you.